everybody, it's me again. We are starting the wig process and putting on the hair to our wig cap. What I have right here is a strawberry blonde, very straight, human hair weft. It's easier to start out with the straight hair because then you can later style it into curly hair if need be. So I bought this at a beauty supply store. So this is called the Sassy Collection. It's 100% human hair. It is 18 inches and they say it's color number 27, which happens to be like a strawberry blonde color. And they have this listed as silky straight. But because it's human hair, you can style it just like you would your own hair on your head. So what I'm doing, I marked the center of my cap, and I'm going to actually mark the center all the way back. So just using that as a straight line and eyeballing it. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, just as long as you have a center portion marked on your wig. And I have a couple resources, like I have this image right here, and let me just move that closer to you so you can take a look. This happens to be the portrait I'm basing the outfit off of, Elizabeth Layton. And if you notice here, and I'll just point out a few features, is that we have sort of a rolled front hairstyle. And this portrait is about 1572, 1573. And here's a picture of Queen Elizabeth I from the same time frame. Curly hair, now hers is red, but easily it could be brown, it could be blonde, and then you'll notice that it's sort of this roll front edge. So my goal basically is to create that same sort of hairstyle using this. What I'm doing with the 18-inch amount of wefts is this may not be enough hair to complete the wig, but I have my own hair to use as hair rats to help fill in any of the other portions. Now my hair is normally a darker brown color, so it is a little bit darker than the light reddish blonde we have here, but the idea behind it is just to use that as stuffing if I needed to create a, let's say, a bun in the back or something like this. I'll still have plenty of hair to do styling. I mean, it's quite a lot here. And what I'm going to do is sew this onto the wig cap, basically going all the way around the edges. I've been looking up wig patterns and I haven't been able to find too many. I do have this book, which is kind of helpful, Historic Wigs. Now they happen to have a all human hair wig on a wig block, which basically looks like a human head, but it's not like a doll. It has no face. And then they use that to do all the styling. Since I have the doll's head and I have the wig cap, I can place it on the doll if need be for styling purposes because I have her in the jar here and she's easily movable. So basically you find your end. Oops. Now these ends are doubled over and stitched down. I don't know if I'll be able to, I think they're completely stitched in. It looks like they are. I always worry about taking any of the stitches out of these because the hair is sewn in literally on a machine. It's sewn together to keep together. And I don't want to, let's say, snip a thread and all the hair starts coming out. I bought the weft to make this a easier process. So I'm going to let that be doubled over. And I know that this is the front because the front is much shorter than the back. Now, I have a knot in my thread, but I'm going to bury the knot in the hair weft. Now, if you have any tails, make sure that you clip them because you don't want them sticking out later. Apparently my knot's a bit small, so I'm going to have to make a bigger knot. There we go. And while I have it loose, I'll clip that end. Try to pick a thread that is close to the color of the hair that you're working with. In this case, I'm using a khaki color, which matches right in with the blonde. And I just use the point of my needle and push it into the hair. So here's my thread, and my knot is already buried. There's some images in the book I just showed you that happens to have sort of the wig on the wig block, and then they're styling it throughout here using curls. They're sort of frizzing it out to create body, which I will be doing eventually after I get this sewn on the wig cap. So I'm starting on the inside edge and going up and around. And because I used linen, and I'm just going to whip stitch this in place. And even though it is firm because of the glue, I can still pierce through it with a nice sharp sewing needle. As I sew, if I see any stray hairs that are sort of sticking up, I try to sort of get them out of the way because I don't want to have weird bunches of hair stuck in my threads. I'm not sewing directly on the edge of the wig cap. I'm going a few rows in to make sure that if the wig was tugged upon, for example, as you're trying to style it, that it still was able to take just a little bit of zhuzhing. Yet again, make sure you're not catching hairs by accident. With straight hair, it's pretty easy. Curly hair, it'd probably be even worse because it would just like to kind of go with you. I'm kind of happy I'm using a combination of my hair and the doll wig. And the reason I say that is because my hair texture is different than the wig itself, so it allows me to kind of play with more than one and see which one I want to really use. But ideally, I have some red in my hair, so wouldn't be inaccurate making, talking about a redhead and she's more of a auburn redhead instead of, or darker brown redhead than a strawberry blonde redhead, because there's a lot of different shapes. And I think I bumped the camera, I'm sorry. So you can kind of see where it's being sewn in, and so when I pull everything up and around, it should have that nice seam right there. A lot of the wig cap tutorials talked about using fabric that was stretchy, and you're still gluing it down to hold it in place. I found that really kind of fascinating because it does reduce the amount of wrinkles that you're going to get out of your fabric. But in the same right, with the stretchiness, if you didn't get your glue in all its places, it could misshapen just a little bit. I'm happy that I'm really using the linen here. And linen was very period. So it has a little stretch, but only on the bias, just like any other normal fabric would do. So yet again, just watching out for hairs if they get caught. Just trying to maneuver around them and not tug on them too much either, because I don't want them to fall out of the weft, because you will get stray hairs coming out of the weft. This creates a great edge for your wig as well. We're getting into harder parts, so I'm going to need to get my thimble. So don't forget your thimble, folks, because it'll get hard on your fingers pretty quick. Especially with the glue, it really likes to be very finicky. I know that some people really find, oh, you're using real human hair. Oh, I think a lot of people expect me to use synthetic hair, which yes, is cheaper to get. But when it comes down to what was available in the time frame, hair actually was quite the commodity, because wigs were popular in the court realm of things. And even eventual and more so in later English history, you have barristers and lawyers running around, or that's sort of their word for someone who deals with the law. who needed to wear a wig as part of their outfit that they would wear to court. And if they didn't come to court dressed appropriately, wearing their wig and their robes, they would get in trouble for it. It wasn't until, I think, either the late 90s or early 2000s that over in England they finally stopped having barristers wear wigs. I believe they still have to wear their robes, though. But it certainly looks very interesting when you have a lady practicing law and she's wearing a male wig from like the, 1700s or so. Because normally the barristers' wig styles were not really big and voluminous. They were really more so something see how it turns? Yeah, it's not like Marie Antoinette where you have this big, very high, voluminous wig. The barrister wigs were normally sort of had their side curls to them and were more so a functional wig as compared to something for normal court dress. But yeah, I encourage you to look it up. It's a really interesting tradition that they still maintain over there in Britain, that they definitely don't have anything like that here in America, that's for sure. Over the past month or so, I've gone back to not going out anywhere because cases here in the United States are going up, up, and up. So it's just better for me to be safe than sorry. So this year happens to be quite the online shopping year for me. I normally would do a little bit here or there, but I definitely did quite a lot more this year than I would have in the past. With this hair being so very straight as it is, it's actually, yes, it can definitely get tangled, but I'm going to run into less of that problem than I would with other circumstances. Just like in anything else, try to keep your stitches small if you can. It's a little difficult when you're trying to pierce through something that's a bit more firm, but try to keep those stitches small if you can. Because the smaller they are, the less noticeable they'll be on your finished product. And that goes for any kind of sewing, to be honest. Showing you my progress here. So we have our fringe that goes down around here, and I'm going around the ear at this point. But notice, this really does seem to sort of match in with the color of the hair, so. The hair that I collected in the bag, I've been collecting not quite a year, but several months. And my hair being very curly as it is, I only wash my hair every 3 to 4 weeks. I know that people might find that really challenging, but because my hair is curly, and anybody who does have curly hair, be it if it is very curly and very tight, or even if it's looser curls, what happens is, because your hair is coiling around or being wavy, the oils from your scalp don't get to travel down the hair strands as easily. And what happens is the ends of your hair dry out very easily. So if you're washing it on a regular basis, you're washing away the oils that are at the root of your hair. And then your ends are drastically suffering because they're being deprived of moisture from continuous washing. So what ends up happening for me is when I don't wash it, I'll do what they call a co-wash, which is conditioner only. When I do wash it, to keep the moisture in, and then also it allows the hair to be more easily styled. But in this case, because I'm working on a wig with my own hair, and then a purchased human hair wig, or wefts in this case, that allows me to play with texture a bit, because what was desirable in the Elizabethan era was to have curly hair instead of straight hair. So a lot of people who had straight hair, or women who had straight hair, curled their hair. And there was many different ways to achieve that. I like to use curling iron when I can for straight to curly hair. It's a little bit easier to control. Okay, there's where we're at this point, down to the bottom. Just to kind of give you an idea, even with it as it is, And this will be a permanent wig on this doll. You get those nice edges going on there. This will be glued down permanent to the doll's head. A lot of people who have other styles of dolls like to have wigs to be removable. When I create my dolls, I make the wigs permanent because that's what they would have done back in the Elizabethan era, because the doll that exists in the Lustmarken Museum in Stockholm, Sweden, which is the Royal Armory over there, that doll's wig does not seem to be removable, and it's fashioned out of human hair. So I do have an extant example that shows me what was used back then. And the reason that that doll survives is because it was never really played with. So keep that into consideration as well. A lot of the things that survive, even let's say old clothes from the 20th century, a lot of the clothes that do survive are because they were only worn a few times, and a lot of the items that were worn often and weren't special occasion clothing, those are the items that have disintegrated since and are lost to us that do research in that in different time frames. So yeah, we're just making this weft go all the way around the edge, and then once I get back to the top, I am just going to continue to circle all the way through until I don't have any more. Now, what happens when I don't have any more? That's where I'm going to use the rats in the middle to fill up space, make volume, and then style the wig. Could I have went ahead and bought a doll wig? Sure, I definitely could have. But I haven't run into any that are sort of half-scale doll wigs. So many of them are much smaller. This would be this would be way too much hair if you were doing just a doll that was 10 or 12 inches tall. This would be, well, you'd have enough hair here for several doll wigs. You could, you know, probably make 2 or 3. So I've run to the end of my thread, and I'm just running it back through the hair weft here. Going to snip. Yet again, we can put it over there. Kind of pin this down and just see how it would look. Since I know I'm doing an updo, that's why I'm facing the hair the way that I am, because the hair is going to be pulled back from the face. So I'm going to bury the knot again. I kept the newspaper down just to catch any loose hairs that might actually fall out. Get closer to you here. Okay. I see a few hairs that got caught in the loop. So just gently pull them out of the loop. You're going to have that happen with the hair just sort of laying on the table. It's going to want to travel with your thread, and you don't want to have these bunches of hairs pinned into the edge of your wig and causing this wispy look that would happen after your wig is done. The wigs and additional hair have been around since Grecian times. Really popular in the theater, as you can imagine, to look like someone else that you're portraying. In this case, if you wore wigs every day and you weren't really using your hair too much, some people may have had it clipped short to prevent lice, is one thing I have heard. I'm not 100% sure if that's accurate or if that happened in the Elizabethan age. I'd have to check Janet Arnold, because I'm certain in her book there's got to be a portion about wigs. I mean, she goes over just about everything else in her book. I love Queen Elizabeth's Wardrobe Unlocked. It's a book that I use. It's kind of my Bible. And I was in the SCA probably 8 years before I finally purchased a copy, because that book was well over $200, and I wanted to make sure that I was going to use it. And at that time, I wanted to make sure that I was going to stay in the SCA, and that any investments I made that for books or materials were going to be used, because when you're starting in the Society for Creative Anachronism, there's kind of upfront cost. You may want to purchase some research books. You may want to purchase certain fabrics. And for those folks like myself who've been in for a long time, we've been working on our clothing and items for decades and improving slowly as we go. And I think a lot of people who are new to the SCA get a little intimidated when they see all these wonderful people running around with these fantastic clothes. But it's not something that you just started out with. It's something that you've accumulated over time. And a lot of people get frustrated because they can't put the money into the SCA like they would want to when they first start out. And my advice would be, do what you can afford. If you can't afford the expensive materials and such, work your way up to it. because that's really honestly how everybody else has done it. I mean, if you have the money and income to start out and really purchase all the things and do the stuff, well, we'll have at it, please. But most people don't. I think for me, what's been helpful is I don't have any children, so I can devote a lot of money to the SCA if I wanted to. Because I've been in so long, I already have what I need for my kit for the most part, and I just purchase materials to make new dresses as I go along. So for the most part, I really don't spend that much money on the SCA anymore because I've accumulated and I'm working off of my stash most often. And I don't recommend everybody have a stash of things. I really wanted to do weaving and spinning to start with to really better understand fabrics and how they behave. So I mean, I have those items. I also have a couple sewing machines and 20 totes of different kinds of fabrics. I actually have to go through a lot of those totes here soon and get rid of fabrics I'm not going to use. There's like a bunch of tapestry-like items and just blends or polyesters. There's fabrics I've been given that aren't useful for what I'm doing. And those are normally given to me by people who just want to get rid of, oh, I don't need this here. You sew, you can have it. It's very rare that somebody else's cast-offs are going to be useful for you. If you have somebody who wants to sort of give you cast-offs, unless you're desperate for fabric, they're probably just better off donating them to a charity store or something like that. It took me a long time to realize that, like the blends and other fabrics, I was just better off spending the money for that fabric and using it and enjoying it and creating the item that I wanted to create instead of going cheap on the fabric and then realizing I ended up with an end result that just was not what I was hoping for because the fabric behaves differently than what I originally should have used. If you used a silk and instead used a silk blend or a polyester, it may not behave the same way. More than likely it won't, because it's not the real thing. Almost around. Now, don't expect that when you're sewing your wefts onto your wig cap or gluing them on that it's going to instantaneously look awesome. It's going to look like somebody who has had all their hair brushed over their eyes and face. That's just how it's going to be. Because until you style the wig, it's just going to sort of be in its original position. But notice how we're getting a nice edge on this wig? Isn't that fantastic? Having something that looks finished really makes a big difference. Let's see here. So that trying to restring my needle. The end of my thread decided it wanted to break, but it broke evenly at least. There we go. There we go. When I'm sewing this on, there's basically 2 lines of stitching on the ends of the weft. And I'm basically trying to get in between those 2 lines of stitching as I'm whipping through the wig cap. What my goal is, and the reason I'm trying to get in between there, is that because those rows of stitching on the weft itself creates a certain amount of strength. So I'm trying to use that strength to make my wig strong as well. There we go. So we made it all the way around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch this right up against the other side. Now, I'm also flattening out my seam here a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to take this thread and put it through the other side and snip it, because I've gotten a shorter piece now. And I want to start out with a longer piece going through there. I don't knot the end, I just bury the end. Okay, so the beginning of our wig here. I know it doesn't look that great to start with, but yet again, it's not going to look fantastic when you start out. You're just making it work what you want. Okay. So I manipulate this to allow me to go around the back. And you want to try to stay at least ½ inch to ¼ inch in, and then you're going to go all the way around again. And we have plenty to be able to go away. We probably will be able to almost go, not quite 3 times, but darn close. Let's see here. It probably would have done me better to have used a goldeny colored fabric if I was going to do the wig cap again. But these things happen. Now, on the underside of the wig cap, you definitely can just pierce right through. What I like is, even though this is stiff, I can do pretty much nearly a running stitch after I've done the initial edge. And since that's on the inside of the wig cap, you're not going to really see those stitches. Oops, I bumped into you, I'm sorry. Try to keep a open space underneath where you can pull your thread through. In this case, it's giving me some trouble. Okay. So I'm creating just a little dip down around the ear, but not as much as I did before going around the edge. It's just enough to create a little interest. Now, normally you would want to pin something like this in place, but because of the hardness of the fabric, it's not exactly an option. What I'm doing is going through, and those hairs that have been caught in my stitching, I am just gently finding the direction in which that they're going and removing them normally with my needle or finger, because I don't want to pull them out of the weft. In this case, it was caught from the one side. Or if I see the hairs move from one area to another, then I know, oh, okay, I caught it on the other side. There we go. Now, because this is a wooden head, if I wanted to tack down the ears with a little tack of some form or a pin while I'm styling, I certainly can still do that. But it would also pierce the head, so that is something to take into consideration as well. I can take bigger stitches on the inside than I would around the edge, because I'm able to pierce through right into the inside of the wig cap. Bless you, starfish. Cat has allergies. I've taken her to the vet, so the vet realizes that there are allergies. There's no issues otherwise. Other than the fact that she's becoming older and more allergic to, I think, herself and everything else. So, because now when she gets her shot, she's going to have like a shot of Benadryl or something like that to keep her from reacting. The joys of aging, what can we say? So we're going along the bottom of the neck right now. Staying within those 2 rows of stitching on the weft. there. We did it again. Maybe I'm going to need to wax my fabric. Here we go. Okay. This is where it gets a little bit more complicated because you have hairs going in one direction from one weft and then hairs going in another direction from the additional layer of the weft. So it gets kind of interesting pretty quick. Not impossible, just interesting. My finger likes to get a little sweaty in my thimble, so sometimes it's not big, but it does try to slide a little bit. Let's see here. What I'm also trying to do is move some of the hairs that I've stitched down out of the way by pushing and moving the weft on the outer edge. That's actually what's kind of neat with the whip stitch on the edge, is you're able to actually kind of manipulate the hair, which on a wig, yeah, you want to be able to do that for sure. Okay, so let's see. All right, so we've gotten back to the edge where we've created our second. So now we're going to be doing our third row at this point. So I'm going to try to stitch this as far as I can and then bury the end. So the second line of stitching, what I'm trying to do is yet again manipulate that down. It's a little bit more difficult since I did a running stitch, but it's still doable since it's just a single line of stitching. Now, I was able to finish that off on the inside. But granted, you still want to be careful because you don't want to accidentally be cutting hairs as well, because that can really happen because you're working with all of this and a large amount. Okay. All right, so third row. Still doing the running stitch. Now this time I'm not going to go down along the ear. I'm just going to sort of do an angle at that area and go away from it. Create just like an L, basically. Because I've already got a plethora of hair with 2 rows already there. So I don't need to really make additional hair in that area. You know, yet again, you'll want to manipulate the hair away. You're creating space in between your wefts. So anywhere from like 1/4 to a 1/2 inch. 1/4 inch is probably better in this case because the fact that you want to have, you want it to be close, but you don't want them to be on top of one another, because you want coverage. Now, the neat thing is, as I go, and because I'm sort of doing this as one continuous line, sort of coiling its way to the center of the wig, what ends up happening is the amount that you're using as you're going along becomes smaller and smaller because of basically the smaller you're making your circles, the less material you're going to be using. So there's actually a possibility, since I have about 12 inches left, I might be able to do a fourth row, which wouldn't be bad. You do want to maintain one hand on the inside so you know where you're piercing into, and then one on the outside if possible. Now, I'm, yet again pulling the weft, the second row of weft. I am gently pulling the bottom, not out here at the hairs, the bottom where I've sewn, and I am just pushing it away from my current work. Okay, and those are attached to what I'm working on. Okay. I know, it seems like a mess, doesn't it? So I'm gonna create another L here. Here we go. See, you're trying to not have the hairs around the edge get caught in the rest. best to try to keep the hairs on their respective sides. It's a little difficult as you're twisting along, but more or less you don't want the hairs to get caught out of place and then you have these weird stray hairs laying in different ways. You want to try to keep the weft and the hairs laying how they're supposed to be laying as you stitch it down, which is easier said than done. So, all right, so now we are on our 4th row, which is great because I think we'll have maybe enough for the end here. We just keep going round and round and round. Okay, so some of this belongs in there. Actually really pleased at how this is turning out so far. My hands want to continue to work. I'm not sure. I may only need the filler hair, or my hair that I collected. I might only need that to just do the puffy part in the front. We'll have to see. I may not actually need to use as much of it as I originally thought. Because this is working out to be great, actually. All right. So I'm going to have to go to the inside here. Push that through. Now I just move all the little hairs out of the way, and then just leave that long. But if you notice here, we have rows of stitching going all the way around multiple different ways, and that is exactly what you want. We basically are on row number 4 at this point. Okay. Other than small pieces of thread, I'm on my last bit, but I do have more of this color on my thread rack, so I can certainly get in there if need be and get more if I need more, but I don't have that much yet to finish. But let's just show you what we have. So this is row number 1 right here. This is row number 2. There is row number 3, and then on the next go round there'll be a row number 4 right there. So as you're seeing, I'm just going around and around and around to create this. I mean, she's definitely gonna have a lot of hair. And what I can do and what I'm thinking about doing is taking the hair that I have back here and laying it down in between my rows and just stitching it down, which is a great way of padding and darkening the scalp without having to try to paint or do anything else. So that is another option that I might do. All right, so let's get where I had last been. See how we have the top of the head still yet to do? All right. That over there. All right. So yet again, we're just going to separate the hair, let it sort of fall all the way around. Now I'm going to take this up and through and underneath. Check where my last stitch was, which was right there. Okay, so I'm going to start in the corner here. And since I pierced through, what I'm going to do is put my weft right on top of it. And just pull through. So still just doing a really light running stitch, trying to not catch the hairs, trying to stay a 1/4 inch away from each weft or line of hair in this case. Now, human hair wig really doesn't smell, other than it kind of smells like shampoo. But of course, before they made these, they cleaned all the hair that they received. And there is still an industry for hair today to make wigs, not just for cancer patients, but for those people who have diseases like alopecia and female and male pattern baldness. So there are ways of still using and making good wigs today. And even those folks who have good hair, like those folks who live in Hollywood, love to use wigs to be able to enhance their performances, like Lady Gaga, Ariana Grande. There's several Hollywood stars that wear and use wigs to accentuate outfits that they wear, costumes that they use for stage purposes. And it's part of their repertoire to be able to create this presence and look that they want. So the tricky part with this, as you're going around, you have the other lines of hair, the other wefts are trying to get in the way. So sometimes being able to push them away and still keep the hair that you're working with organized gets to be more and more complicated, but don't let it frustrate you. Let me just keep turning and turning and turning. We're almost to the end. So this is row number 5, actually. Okay. Now I'm pushing away row number 4, tugging that over so I can make room for row number 5. Alright, so we weren't able to make a complete circle of row number 5, but we definitely got halfway through. So that's not bad, all things considered. Now keep in mind, I'm doing an updo for this. So for me, it's not that big of a deal if we don't have a lot of hair on the top, because that's why I had the spare for. And go up through. Through. So at this point, we really have that much left on the top. Now, I mean, I could certainly spiral through or get another small weft. I'm considering going out and getting another small weft, but I really don't think I need to be honest with you. So just clearing out the hair here and putting a knot on the inside, just to make that nice and tight. And snip those. Now I'm looking at my covering here, and I don't have any spare hairs on me. I don't have any spare hairs on the newspaper, so I'm really pleased, even though it looks a little wonky, so to speak. I'm really pleased that we didn't lose any of the hairs. We might lose some now that we're going to have to adhere and style the hair. But look at all the length we have to play with at this point. Oops. We've got quite a bit. Now, to set the hair, heat is probably the easiest thing to use at this point, because what you're seeing and what the hair is doing is it wants to go whatever direction it was originally laying, nice and straight and things like this. So because of that, it wants to do whatever it wants to do. So heat setting is one way to take care of this. Which you can either do with a flat iron, a curling iron, or a hot hair dryer sort of situation. am going to kind of create a top knot. Is what I'm going to do at this point, because that's really what the hair sort of wants to do. And I'm just sort of finger combing. I'm not even going to pull out like a brush at this point. But you can kind of see what it'll look like. There we go. But yeah, because of all the weight of the hair right now, that's why it's given so much trouble. But stay tuned, because I will style this and come back really quick and kind of show how it looks that way. So if you like this video and want to subscribe or take a look at my channel, there's other very interesting videos. Thanks for watching. Bye.